The following Conscious Consumer Network recording of a live broadcast is available to purchase in high definition at ethymarket.com. Support free and independent media by becoming a CCN pledger. For €10 a month, you can have unlimited access to CCN high definition downloads at ethymarket.com. Ethymarket, the ethical marketplace for conscious consumers. Hello, good evening, everybody. My name is Mel V, and this is Conscious Consumer Network. The date is the 11th of July, 2015, and this is the scheduled program, Global Initiatives Review. Tonight's Global Initiatives Review goes down some rather interesting territory. Let's just say that this really is, of all the global initiative reviews that I will probably ever do or that I have ever done, this is the one which strikes closest to my heart because it, how do we say, it's my home. This is South Africa. This is where my heart is rooted. And, my very first book was to educate people in South Africa because ultimately it's the place that I care the most about. It's the closest thing to home that I really have, and my whole family's still there, despite the fact that I've lived abroad for so long, and that's really due to economic circumstances there. So this is a very deep and profound journey, and I'd like to thank everybody up front for tuning in for this particular edition because this one is one of the harshest looks at some very unfortunate things that are going on in the truth movement that need to be brought to light. And we need to be more conscious of what is worth putting our effort and energy into and what is not. So with no further ado, tonight's topic of conversation for Global Media Review is Ubuntu and Michael Tellinger. This is a gentleman with whom I've had personal experience. I first read Michael Tellinger's book, Slave Species of God, in 2009, and have since read every other book that Michael Tellinger has since published. My fascination with Tellinger lies in the fact that he is a South African, much like myself. After reading Slave Species, I contacted Michael Tellinger asking for a radio interview. We made several appointments, and on 2 occasions, Michael just did not show for his radio interview, leaving me and the audience hanging. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, Michael emailed me and decided to join me on the radio show that week, claiming a busy schedule and lack of internet access as his excuses for missing both shows. In all my time as a journalist up until that point, at least, I had never had anybody do this to me, and I thought it was rather selfish just to leave me hanging twice in a row. And after I had given up wanting to speak to him, he decided he wanted to come on a show. As I'm passionately South African, and I will do almost anything to promote a South African alternative media researcher, I put this experience aside and agreed to have Michael Tellinger on my radio show after he missed 2 other live on-air appointments, hoping that it was just genuinely down to poor communications. It was shortly after this show that I realized that the reason why Michael had suddenly taken an interest in speaking to me was because I had done 2 interviews with David Icke, and Michael wanted to get his hands on David, or at least in contact with him. Whilst I was working with David from September to November 2009, whilst he was traveling around Europe, I discussed with David the possibility of organizing a tour in South Africa for 2010. I clearly remember the conversation when Michael asked me to hook him up with David Icke. When I mentioned to Michael that David and I had made tentative plans for a speaking tour in South Africa in 2010, Michael immediately wanted to be part of it, and we went about the process of getting started on preparational plans. It was decided that Michael would handle the Johannesburg David Icke speaking event, and I would be responsible for the Cape Town event. Now, even before I flew out to South Africa in February 2010 to organize the event, I became suspicious of the way in which Michael Tellinger did business. Tellinger planned to sell the tickets for the David Icke event for 450 South African rands, which he hoped to sell 1,000 tickets. If this had been the case, he would have totaled 450,000 rand, and that would have been made on ticket sales only, not book sales or anything else. despite the vast sum of money that he stood to make from this event, Michael only offered David a paltry sum of 40,000 Rand, which was less than 10% of the potential takings of the event. In order that I was able to go to South Africa to organize this event for David Icke, I had to sell my car. In fact, we had so little money that my husband had to stay behind whilst I went off to South Africa, which was really, it was very hard for both of us. And I was gone for 6 months, and it's honestly the longest that Biggie and I have ever been apart. And it was the hardest 6 months, honestly, of my life ever. Very intense. Before I flew out to South Africa, David gave me the name of his very good friend who also lives in my hometown of Durban. And she is an author by the name of Linda Smith. And this is I beg your pardon. This is a still of Linda, which I caught of her during the interview that I did with her. And I went to meet Linda, and I was informed, well, I informed her that I was organizing David Icke speaking to her. We had like coffee and everything, and we actually really got on well. And she took me to this old bookstore, like secondhand bookstore, where I managed to find the pride and joy of my book collection, which is an original edition of Indaba, My Children by Credo Mutwa, which I'm very proud to own a copy of. And it really is the pride and joy of my book collection. It's falling apart, it's sellotaped together. And she was the one who took me to this little bookstore, and after digging through all these dusty old books, I can't believe I found an original edition, and I bought it for only 180 Rand. That's like 18 or more like 15 euros. She's an amazing woman, Linda. I really enjoyed her so much, but she was also very good friends with David Icke. And because it was David that says, go meet Linda, David hooked me up with Linda, and basically, I told her that I was working with Michael Tellinger because I was organizing one leg of David speaking to her, which is the Cape Town event, and Michael was going to do the other one, simply because I only took with me 5,000 euros and I didn't have enough to do both events myself, and I needed a second partner to make sure that we got both of the major cities covered. Anyway, Linda immediately began to put me in touch with several people, all of whom had very disturbing stories to tell me about Michael Tellinger. Now, I just want to introduce you to Linda Smith's work if nobody knows of her. I'm sure many of you might know of her. She's a wonderful woman who was born, I think it was actually north of Rhodesia. So, one of these people that's also moved around. I think it's in Barotse land. Anyway, sort of that part of Central Africa. And really just some amazing stories of how she had to escape in the war and sounds of bullets and all things. And this book's actually got a foreword by Dr. Credo Mutwa. So Linda and Credo are very good friends, and it was Linda who first gave me Credo's telephone number when I got to South Africa so that I could speak to him in Virginia when I was there in 2010. So really a lovely lady. So I was put in touch with Virginia and Credo Mutwa, and they told me that Michael Tellinger had been collecting money for them on their behalf, and he had never paid them a single penny. Now, I've heard this story from a few different sources, which are not even rooted with Credo, about the collection of money and then actually not giving it over to the cause. So this is a pattern that is developed. Linda Smith also put me in touch with a famous South African historical writer, a woman, Professor Brenda Sullivan, who has since passed away. And I did have the opportunity when I was there in South Africa in 2010. I had the blessed opportunity to speak with Professor Brenda Sullivan, who wrote this book called Africa Through the Mists of Time. Anyway, Brenda shared with me all the correspondence she had to back up her story of her experience with Michael Tellinger. She sent me all the copies of the email, so I saw this all first-hand witness account for myself. Anyway, the story was that Michael Tellinger had apparently approached Brenda Sullivan to republish this book. Professor Sullivan agreed to let Michael publish it and sent Michael a DVD of the book and a DVD containing all the original photographs that she had of various stones and carvings and all sorts of things, glyphs from all over her travels in Africa. And she is one of the pioneers of this sort of research, okay? And basically, Michael then decided to take the photos of interest from Professor Sullivan's CD, publish them in his own work without her permission, without actually mentioning her in the credits. And then in 2010, Professor Sullivan actually provided me with all the correspondence that she engaged in after she discovered what Michael Tellinger had done. And in one of the letters, it clearly states that Professor Sullivan actually had to forcefully demand his CDs to be returned, and she had to take legal action against Michael to get him to remove all the photos from his book. Once we had gone through the collection of testimonies from different people that pretty much pointed to the same thing, that Tellinger was screwing everybody over and is a complete unscrupulous con man, Linda then decided to contact David Icke and told him all about what was going on with Michael Tellinger. And David Icke confirmed these facts with his dear friend Credo Mutwa, and I'll go on to discuss the Credo Mutwa issue in a moment. But basically, the result was that David Icke decided he didn't want to work with Michael Tellinger. And as Michael was involved with organizing the speaking event in South Africa in 2010, David Icke decided to cancel the event. By this stage, I was already several thousand euros out of pocket, having begun the process of creating the speaking tour and getting artworks done and printed and everything. Anyway, David Icke promised to repay £2,000. That was the figure we settled on. Of course, I was much more out of pocket, but that was what we agreed to after much correspondence in writing. But to date, I've never received a penny. However, what David did do was he did send me a copy of his latest book, which was at that time this one, Human Race, Get Off Your Knees, The Lion Sleeps No More. And he sent it to my family home in South Africa, DHL. So this cost a bit of money to send. So I really appreciated getting that. And that was actually all I ever got for all of this drama. Anyway, so after Tellinger and Michael had kind of fallen out because Tellinger owed Credo money, and I decided to go along to Michael Tellinger's speaking event at La Lucia Library, and I told him I was going to be there. And what was funny was I arrived an hour early, and I went in, and I gave my name, and I checked on, and the guy at the door checked the list, and my name wasn't on the list. I wasn't even under the journalist list, and that was funny because I had sent him an email telling him I'd be there. But anyway, I sat there, and I listened to his lecture, and I filmed it, and I'm going to just play a little bit of it here. Biggie, tell me if the sound comes through or not.
No sound.
Okay. Well, this is just a little bit of footage from the lecture tour, talking about slave species of God. And talking about the first civilizations on Earth, Sumerian tablet. Let me move this on a bit. And this is just various parts of his lecture and pictures from his lecture. But what was interesting here was he was talking about the first Holy Trinity in the Bible, Anu, Enlil, and Enki, all right? And when you talk about Holy Trinity, the Mother Goddess figure is pivotal in most of them. There's always a feminine Mother Goddess aspect, and not included in this particular description. He thinks his Holy Trinity is strictly patriarchal from the get-go, which is not the case. But a lot of just basic knowledge that's not properly researched. You can see this is all Zechariah Sitchin stuff we've got going on here. Anyway, I'll carry on. And he shows these photos of these stone structures. And he's got pictures of, yeah, these ruins all over Africa and Waterval Bourbon. And this is him. There's a shot here where I want to quickly pause on it when it comes up. He says, oopsie, I've lost it. But anyway, he says one of the horseshoe shapes is the shape of an O. Okay. One of these horseshoe shape type thingies is actually like the shape of an O. And it's not. It's actually, you hear Dr. Craden what you're talking about it, saying that the horseshoe is not the shape of an O, and that's absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, here's some of the terraces of Waterval Bourbon. Here's some of the rocks that Michael Tellinger likes to bang together when he goes on these tours. And they ring like bells. They're resonant. And just various clips, but let me move on to the next one. Anyway, so what was interesting at this lecture, just to pop back to this quickly, was that he didn't want to take any questions at the end. And it was at this lecture, he actually introduced me to Dr. Jennifer Welsh, who's a lady who handles and is the keeper of a crystal skull. She's a very interesting woman, and got the chance to communicate with her more after I was introduced to her by Michael in 2010. And even she's fallen out with Michael. It seems like absolutely everybody that works with him or, tries to do something that's, anything really that doesn't endorse him, falls out with him. So I got stuck in South Africa over the World Cup in 2010. This is me having a lot of fun. Only thing I could really do was, if you can't beat them, join them, because my hometown just was awash with people in the streets partying. A very interesting time to be back in South Africa, indeed. During this time, though, I went through some very traumatic experiences at the hand of my, let's just call them imbalanced, just a polite word, imbalanced family. I shouldn't have even been at my home in Durban. I should have been in Cape Town organising David Icke's speaking tour. But one of the many things that happened to me was that I was severely sexually assaulted by a friend of the family. I say a family here, but it was very hard to write about this, so I haven't actually gone back and read it over properly. But basically, they just wanted me to pretend it never happened because they didn't want a big deal to, So I went to the police to make a report, and my mom actually, chased after me about 40 minutes after I'd gone to the police station. She walked in and dragged me out of there. She just wanted me to shut up and let it go away quietly, because, the person involved was a family friend, and it was just too much drama, and I'd go away and they'd still be left with it and all of this. And after 6 months, my parents actually just in the end decided to pay for me to go back to Holland to be with my husband, to stop me from taking further action and potentially embarrassing the family. And that was such betrayal on so many levels. And this whole incident wouldn't have happened. I've never spoken about this, but this whole incident wouldn't have happened was I in Cape Town organising the speaking event for David Icke. And needless to say, since 2010, I've not seen my family, and I probably speak to my mother twice a year. Anyway, I was meant to meet up with Bill Ryan in Johannesburg over this period, but was unable to make the journey due to dealing with the sexual assault matter and all the drama that came with it and all the conflict in the family it caused. But instead, Bill Ryan met up with David Icke, who then flew out anyway just to meet up with Bill Ryan to go see Credo Mutwa, because Credo Mutwa at that stage was, he was very sick, and then we didn't know if he was going to make it. And David and Credo went out there just to catalogue the stories for a couple of days that Credo had to tell. And I was actually meant to go join them and never actually got there in the end because of dealing with all this stuff. Anyway, so this was a letter that was sent to me by my dear friend Bill Ryan at the time. And basically it said, "Hi, Mel. This morning I arrived at Credo's place, and I found him sitting outside Michael Tellinger. I beg your pardon. I found him sitting outside with Michael Tellinger's Slave Species of God in his hand." Now, Slave Species of God is Tellinger's books. He was exercised and irritated and started giving a critique of all of Michael's work on Adam's calendar, going through the images in the book and explaining how Michael got many things wrong and that he had no idea about African culture. He went into quite some fascinating detail. And when I asked him if he had spoken with Michael about this, he replied, "This is a paraphrase from memory. I have this all on camera." In quotations, "Tellinger doesn't want to listen to me. He only wants to use my name." Whatever really happened or didn't happen, there is clearly immense wealth of accurate information about Adam's calendar that Credo possesses, which Michael, for whatever reason, has not included in his book, going instead for interpretations which Credo insists are just plain wrong. Credo was quite upset. "Someone has to correct this," he said over and over again. "As you know, I've never met Michael, been to Adam's calendar, or even read that book, but I'm absolutely trust Credo on this. You have to be with him for only 10 minutes to realize that he's a walking encyclopedia of African history, symbology, mythology, and legend, and cannot be swept aside." Credo stated in fairness when Michael was right. The impression I got from Credo was that the book is 50% right and 50% wrong. For Credo, one of the few Romanian guardians of traditional African history and mythology, this is highly upsetting and almost a desecration of all that he feels he's trying to stand for. These indiscrepancies are problematic and hard to explain, but they are real, I have this whole episode on camera, and we'll be releasing it as a standalone video of maybe 20 minutes or so. Love, Bill. And this was sent in August 2010, and Bill actually never released that footage at that time. He went on to release this footage a little bit later when he found it again. And I'll just show you a little bit of the beginning bits here, because this actually only recently surfaced when Alfred Weber started to do a bit of investigating into Michael Tellinger as well, and released his pieces. And one of the bits that Alfred Weber released was this letter that Bill Ryan wrote to me, which I, in fact, gave to Alfred. And this went public. And as Bill says here, this previously unpublished video was recorded at Crater Mutwa's South African home on the 3rd of September 2010, when David Icke and I went to visit this great shaman and historian for 3 weeks. Okay. And it was only released recently. This video records Crater critiquing Michael Tellinger's second book. So this is available on Alpha Zebra, which is Bill Ryan's personal channel. Crater says, the world has got to know before Africa is destroyed, as she is in the process of being destroyed. The world has got to know what we know. Anyway, he goes on this long chat about talking about slave species, I beg your pardon, temples of the African gods, which is this book here, and points out a lot of things which, in his knowledge, are incorrect, deliberate discrepancies. And it's there, it's available for anybody to watch if they want to. I'm not going to go into it now. Anyway, my personal self, I began to realize that as a result of my involvement with Michael Tellinger, I'd been suckered in by a complete con man. The more I began to dig, the more I realized that Michael Tellinger's knowledge is very limited. He does not actually do the research himself. He's actually a very lazy researcher. He doesn't do it. And when people send him stuff, he doesn't look into it. Nor is he searching for the answers or truth. Rather, he has seized upon the work of others, manipulated these people, used them, and taken the credit for it. There also appears to be a long-standing history of intellectual theft, copyright infringement, theft of royalties, and dishonoring contracts, going all the way back to his previous company, Music Masters CC. I have dug into this guy. Trust me, there is so much dirt on him. Anyway, the harshest thing about Michael is he's made a real big name for himself screwing over local heroes and celebrities in South Africa. Some of the biggest names in the literary and research world have come a cropper of this dude. The list of people who have made claims against Michael Tellinger or have very real charges and evidence of wrongdoing by him, and I've spoken to each and every one of them in person, include the who's who of South African literary, educational, and academic and research circles. And of course, they include Johan Engelbrecht, Johan Heine, Brenda Sullivan, Crater Mutwa, Dr. Jennifer Welsh, Professor Pieter Wagenaar, and Willem de Swart. Michael Tellinger entered into an agreement with Crater Mutwa, and this is where we have definitive proof of theft. Michael Tellinger entered an agreement with Crater Mutwa to do a series of interviews for a 50-50 split in sales. Several of the DVDs have been sold. To date, not a penny has been received in payment from Michael Tellinger to Crater Mutwa. I have people who've worked in his shop who said they've sold these DVDs, and I actually was given a purchase order with addresses of all of Michael Tellinger's customers, of people who have been sent this DVD, and I've checked with many of them. So, yes, these DVDs have been paid for. Michael Tellinger's received money for them, okay? He has a 50-50 agreement, all right, which you can see here, the contract between Michael Tellinger and Crater Mutwa. And you can see over here, Crater v. Mutwa, the author, that's him right in there, and witness is his wife, Virginia Mutwa, and Michael Tellinger, and I don't know who that is, but basically 7th of March 2010 at Kuruman. Okay, so this is all going on. this is all going on. You can see here it's got their address and telephone number, passport number, ID number, everything. The publisher, Zulu Planet Publishers, okay, which is Michael Tellinger's company. Dr. Credo Mutwa is one of the greatest men in Africa. Michael Tellinger has used this overly exploited old African Sangoma to further his ends. Credo openly admits Michael doesn't care about me. He just wants to use my name to sell his books. And I think the body language here says it all. So let's go into a little bit of history of Michael Tellinger, because I'm sure many of you probably haven't seen this or know about this. I grew up in South Africa, so this is part of my childhood, really. Michael Tellinger's music career started off as one half of Sterling and Tellinger. Like many of the worst offending egomaniacs in the truth movement, Michael is suffering from failed rock star syndrome and craves attention and adulation, desperate for fame and recognition. Michael started off his career as one half of the cheesy 80s duo Sterling and Tellinger. Check it out. Lots of blusher and lipstick and eyeshadow. And I actually thought he was gay, to be honest with you, because of the amount of makeup he wore back then. Anyway, this dude's got loads of blusher on, but you can see real 80s look. Oh, by the way, this one's Michael Tellinger, just so you know. Anyway, the highlight of Michael Tellinger's performance career, and one of the lesser-known facts about Michael Tellinger, is actually the fact that he played Joseph in Joseph's Technicolor Dreamcoat. No jokes, guys. And, of course, he's a wannabe Indiana Jones, banging together rocks at every opportunity, and they ring like bells. And this is him standing next to a famous site in South Africa where there is a massive foot imprint into the rock. And just to show you how much actual evidence and digging information and hardcore fact and paperwork we have against this guy, this is a copy of the Closed Corporations Act, and it shows Michael Tellinger's company was previously named Music Masters and has been renamed Zulu Planet Publishers. And we've got absolutely everything on this guy's trading details going all the way back. So, yeah, this is a paid-for copy of the Closed Corporations Act, which anybody can receive a copy of, by the way. This is a matter of public record. You just have to pay 30 Rand for it, and they'll send you a copy. So no violations here. Just to show that we've gone into look at everything, because, of course, Zulu Planet Publishers is what is on this contract here. Zulu Planet Publishers with Credo Mutwa, where they talk about equally on a 50-50 split basis. And to date, not one single penny has been received by Credo Mutwa. All of it's gone into Michael's pocket. Anyway, here's another legendary South African writer, Johann Engelbrecht, who wrote this excellent little book called Kafferkeen, which was actually won an award, a literary award, okay? And despite its perhaps the pejoratively derogatory name, it's not derogatory at all. It's a very sweet little story. And basically, the way Michael was so utterly, dismissive towards the way he treated this book, is unbelievable. Imagine you publish a book, you get a publisher to publish your book, a literary awards company then approaches your publisher to go, "Ooh, I like the book that your client has published, and we want to give them an award. How would you like it if your publisher goes, well, actually, I don't give a fuck?" This guy, Johann Engelbrecht, was never told by Michael Tellinger that the awards company or the awards, don't even know the name, wanted to give him this award. They actually had to get hold of him to tell him, you've been nominated, and they sent this guy, Johann, the correspondence. This awards people send Johann the correspondence between themselves and Michael Tellinger, where Michael was just so dismissive. He didn't really care. It's almost like he was jealous. You know, he wasn't happy for the dude that he published. It was just actually very nasty. And no one understood that. That for me is just completely weird. Not to mention the fact he was so negligent about the way the cover of the book was done. And if anybody wants to see the interview about that, there is an interview with Johann Engelbrecht, which we did earlier on this year. It was, I think, in January. And he gave his testimony to, with regards to Michael Tellinger and his experience, to myself and India Merkelson, who has since left our network, who ties into this again later. But basically, India listened to the whole story with myself about what happened to Johan at the hands of Michael Tellinger. And we went through this forensic audit. Well, it was 70 pages. I read through it. India didn't, but I read through the whole thing. And what Johan did was he actually went and spent a huge amount of money getting a forensic audit done so that we knew exactly what was what and where Michael had gone wrong and where he had just completely been negligent. It was unbelievable, the level of negligence that was found out in this forensic audit. And that is a matter of public record. We can provide that to anybody who wants to see it. Anyway, Michael Tellinger then decided, after all the disasters with various people he had worked with in publishing, that he had screwed over, either deliberately or by neglect. He began publishing his own books by copying other people's research and work and claiming it as his own, not giving them any credit or sharing any profits when arrangements to do so were put in place. No surprises there. A couple of Michael's books, more second editions of earlier books. This is the first edition of Slave Species of God, which I have a copy of. And let me just see if I can grab it here, because I do want to show you that I don't just make this stuff up. I have actually read this. And you can see it's a well dog-eared book, and there's plenty of notes in the margin, because I know Zechariah Sitchin's work very well myself, being a researcher. And I basically went through this thing piece by piece, able to find. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I don't think you could hear me there. I actually went through this book piece by piece. You can see it's dog-eared, all right, and it's got notes in the margin. And basically, are you sure the volume's okay?
Yes.
Yeah. And basically, I've made notes as to where it compares with Zechariah Sitchin's work and all sorts. And this, it's not just me saying this. I have actually gone and done the comparators. I have done the research to see where there's plagiarism. And this is all somebody else's work. This is no original research here. This is copy and paste. This is sitting with somebody else's work and putting it into your own books. There's no original searcher spirit. Okay, we all stand on the shoulders of giants as researchers. Myself, I do too. But I have a lot of original research. I really do. You can just go to Dragonology and you can see that. Other people's works help you find your own way. But there's no, for me, natural path of his own growth or progression or instinctual searching to know the truth. It's just a kind of, let's seize upon truth as if it's the new religion. It's not really an inner working for him at all. Anyway, the issue I have with him plagiarizing Zechariah Sitchin's work is, it's not even based on credible information, because the dragons are everywhere. You cannot ignore them. They're freaking everywhere. And Zechariah Sitchin in all of his books doesn't mention the reptilians, the dragons, any of that. He doesn't mention it in any of the Sumerian tablet interpretations. Okay. Now, the time I spent with David Icke in 2009, he told me when he met Zechariah Sitchin told him specifically to stay away from the reptilians and the dragons. All right. Now, Arizona Wilder's interview and testimony, she states that she saw Zechariah Sitchin at an Illuminati ritual with the Queen, and she saw him shapeshift into a dragon. Don't know if that's true or not, but it's interesting. Anyway, this is pictures of Zechariah Sitchin at a Freemason's ritual in all his garb. As you can see, he's got his chains on, all his regalia. He is, in fact, a 33rd degree Freemason. Surprise, surprise. Anyway, moving on swiftly. Michael Tellinger and Johan Heine. Adam's calendar. See, this guy here, Johan Heine, is actually a helicopter pilot, and they're standing here by some of the standing stones, monolithic stones that are artificially placed there by a previous culture, sun calendar of sorts. And he was the guy who found it, because how would you find an arrangement of rocks of that size just kind of scattered across the landscape but from the air. And basically the story goes that Johann Heine actually approached Michael Tellinger, to show you here the view from Johann Heine's helicopter, where he got all these pictures. And you can see he saw these stones and he thought, that's a little strange alignment. He parked the helicopter, went down, had a look, and he got some people up there, did the measurements, and they're pretty much aligned with north and south and east and west. And it was very, very interesting. And he approached Michael Tellinger after a lecture, showed him some photos, and Michael Tellinger basically seized upon all of this, went on a world speaking tour, wrote a book, and very kindly included Johann Heine's name on the front of the book before his own, okay? But Johann Heine, to date, and the Makomati Foundation, to date, have never received a single penny from Michael Tellinger, despite the fact that there's a contractual agreement between Johann Heine, who is the foundational trustee or something like that of the Makomati Foundation, with whom Tellinger agreed to give a percentage of the sales of Adam's calendar to, and that too has never happened. So Johann Heine and the Makomati Foundation have to date never seen a penny for any of the books. Michael Tellinger still has artifacts in his Stone Circle restaurant in Waterfall-Boven, which he treats like a museum, his own personal museum. And these artifacts belong to the Makomati Foundation, and they've been requested to be returned. To date, no artifacts have been returned. The Makomati Foundation and Johann Heine have distanced themselves from Michael Tellinger. And I have a testimony given to me by Johann Heine as well, which he did live on Conscious Consumer Network, and you can also find that one on our YouTube channel. It's all there, or just Google CCN, Johann Heine, Melvi, and Michael Tellinger. Put those all in, I'm sure it'll come up. Melvi speaks to Johann Heine about Michael Tellinger, and he gives his full testimony. You can hear it from his mouth, not mine. Anyway, Michael Tellinger likes to jump on any trendy bandwagon he sees coming his way. The problem is he never properly does his research, and thus his books and concepts are largely a copy and paste of other people's works and ideas into his labels and ill-constructed frameworks. The concept of contributionism is very flawed, and he doesn't actually know how it works. When he explains it, he himself doesn't understand the finer mechanisms of it. The simple fact is contributionism is not practical. And it's not a realistic transitional modality from slavery to freedom. And I'll give you an idea. Michael talks about how contributionism works on the tenets of everybody contributes to the society. Those who contribute more get more energetic currency or have higher standing as such. But the basis of it is that we all want to contribute as opposed to we have to work for money. Now, let me ask you something. Who's going to be the ones who want to contribute to mopping up the nightclub dance floor when someone's puked all over it, or the toilets at the rugby stadium after a big rugby game or something like that? Who's going to be the contributionist person who agrees to do all of that? It's not I think it's utopian idealism at its best, but a completely impractical dream that he's seeding people with without actually looking at the fact that you cannot go from an all-money society to a no-money society just like that without some major disaster. And what he is proposing, he himself isn't actually even enforcing. He's just using it as propaganda. Anyway, Michael Tellinger also made a name for himself when he took on the South African banking giant Standard Bank. The dispute was over Michael Tellinger refusing to pay his mortgage because the money the bank lent him in the first place was made up, which, of course, is bang on. And, of course, we've got the whole securitization aspect of it happening in South Africa too, which Scott Kundell very cleverly brought to the public realm. So well done, Scott. Although the premise upon which Tellinger went to court is honorable, the case suddenly went away with some very strange circumstances. Evidence exists that Tellinger was paid to go away quietly, and this case just died down. Well, suddenly it was a big thing, and nothing was ever heard of it. And there was a story about a lawyer being beat up and money raised for him and all sorts, and even that's questionable at best. Anyway, nothing more of this case has ever been heard. Exploitation. This dude here, one of many people who donated endless hours to Michael Tellinger to further his own ends. In a country which is struggling so much, this kind of exploitation is criminal. Everyone who works with Michael Tellinger for more than a short period of time ends up walking away with the same experience and story. Over the last 6 years, I've gathered at least 50 different witness testimonies and statements and claims, all indicating a very disturbing pattern of a self-obsessed, narcissistic sociopath that doesn't care about who he uses and screws over to further his own ends and feed his gargantuan ego. So, like, where does ego go? Ego goes into politics. Straight from Celebrityville and what do we call it? Rock and roll to politics. I mean, it's very obvious, the pattern here. Michael Tellinger registered a political party called the Ubuntu Party. Anyway, he was planning on running for president, and the whole campaign cost a lot of money and a lot of donations and sponsorship were raised, as always. And he didn't even get enough votes to secure a single seat in parliament. Sorry, makes me laugh. Anyway, this is the gratuitous promotional selfie of Michael Tellinger and Louise Clark at the voting polls, watching the results come in during the South African elections of 2014. Louise Clark is his partner. And this is what Michael Tellinger wrote about the elections of 2014, okay? And this is actually extracted from an article I wrote about it at the time, which is called Address to the Ubuntu Party, which was immediately after these elections. Michael wrote, Ubuntu received 8,234 votes, where we needed about 45,000 for one seat in parliament. We were hoping for at least 50,000 votes from a support base of around 200,000 New Era and Ubuntu subscribers and a further 8,000 SMS supporters. I would be lying if I said that I was not disappointed. A bit. Anyway, indeed, it was a gallant and ambitious effort by Michael Tellinger. But in all honesty, I never held up any hope of him ever getting a single seat in parliament, never mind actually becoming the president of South Africa, as discussed with him in our interview at the Breakthrough Energy Movement Conference in 2012, which I'll reference later. The simple fact is we cannot create a new paradigm as per contributionism, the basis of the Ubuntu Party's manifesto, with old paradigm practices. We are most certainly not going to change the world with politics and voting, as these are illusory ideals set upon the public to give them the idea that they have rights and that they are free, when in fact, and that they actually do have a say in the country's operating policies in return for the taxes they pay, when in fact they don't. And this is what has confused me from the very beginning of coming into the knowledge of Michael Tellinger's decision to get into politics by creating the Ubuntu Party. However, how can an apparently intelligent man who is very aware of the global conspiracy, and I have sent the book to him, and I know he's read it because we've corresponded about it, he's read my book, and how it pertains to South Africa, especially since Michael himself goes into the stuff himself when he talks about the banks and all that, okay, and he's gone to the court and he's fought the banks. How does he think it's a good idea to continue and contribute to the illusory game of politics and voting? This is something I've never been able to reconcile. It's how this apparently awake and aware, intelligent man thinks politics is the answer. In fact, Michael Tellinger so ardently believes in the illusion he purports to be fighting against that he stated the following reasons why Ubuntu did not get votes, which so disappointed him. Continuing from Michael Tellinger's post and post-election address on the Ubuntu Party's official website, he says, instead of voting for saving ourselves and for true change in our lives, we vote for safety in numbers where we believe the others will vote. Really? Is that what you told yourself, Michael? Shame on you. The honest truth is, and here's where the schism is obvious, it is very clear that Michael Tellinger actually believes that we can gain true change through the process of voting. Either Michael is in a state of complete cognitive dissonance, or he is completely devoid of how the planet really works. Michael Tellinger has been criticized by African tribal leaders for mixing the African philosophy of Ubuntu with Western ideas of politics. The philosophy of Ubuntu is that we need simply live and cooperate together in kindness and oneness, profiting off the sacred philosophies of their African heritage and twisting it to fill his pockets instead. This shows a great disrespect to the African way, as far as I'm concerned. And as a South African myself, this is a thing that really fucks me off the most. It really gets under my skin. Anyway, encounters of a second kind. See, I made notes to make sure I didn't go off any unnecessary emotional tangents. I had to stay on point tonight. In November 2012, I got to see Michael Tellinger for the second time at the Breakthrough Energy Movement Conference in Hilversum in Holland. And this is also where I met Fernando Vossa and Sasha Stone and Andrew Johnson and Dr. Judy Wood and everybody else that was working there at this conference. And this is a still from the interview page from YouTube of the interview that I did with him there. And I questioned Michael Tellinger about quite a few things because what was apparent to me by this stage was I had read every single one of his books he'd written up until this point. And I had specifically for this conference read Temples of the African Gods because I'd been meaning to read it for a while. And I noticed in there, because obviously I do research into dragons, so it was of huge interest to me to find that in the opening pages he references a picture from ancient Greece of one of the Greek characters being sent to Hades, and the character is actually drawn with a serpent bottom, like a long elongated snake bottom. And Michael was using this picture to reference that the gods of the past weren't quite human and that they were, but yet at the lecture he gave at this particular conference, he completely sidestepped the whole reptilian thing and decided to go with that he doesn't really think they are the Anunnaki or anything. Totally sidestep the subject. It's almost like it's so taboo. He doesn't want to go there because he doesn't want to ruin his popularity, even if it is the truth. Okay, that's a sad thing. It's also, I think, one of the reasons why, if he is genuinely just a misguided truth, or why he stays away from the Vatican, because he knows chomping on people's religions is dangerous territory, particularly in South Africa. But that's why I don't live in South Africa. When questioned, Tellinger did not even know what a Knight of Malta was, sincerely, because I was like, so you seem to be pretty big chums with, you always talk up Nelson Mandela. He really bigs up Nelson Mandela in some of his interviews, and like Nelson Mandela did this, and this. And I was been listening to some of this stuff before I went to the Breakthrough Energy Movement Conference. I'm like, what? What is he on about? Does he not know that Nelson Mandela is a Knight of Malta, actually a Knight of St. John, which is a military order of the Sovereign Military Order of the Knights of Malta. Anyway, this is a still of, you can see over here, Judy Wood, Andrew Johnson, Sasha Stone, Michael Tellinger, all sat in front of me while I'm questioning and running this press conference at the Breakthrough Energy Movement Conference. There were 3 of them that day, and I got to compile all of them and host all of them and sort of moderate all of them as well. Interesting day. Anyway, for more about African Knights, I suggest you guys please check out my book, The South African Guide to the Global Conspiracy, Book 1, Light and Dark. And this book was inspired after I came back from South Africa and realized that we could not rely on David Icke to educate everybody, as he has since not been back, not even on a speaking tour, nothing. And thus, I titled this book as, The South African Guide to the Global Conspiracy, as a bit of a fuck you to David Icke, because he wasn't going to come help my people in my home country. So I was going to have to do it, because his book was called The David Icke Guide to the Global Conspiracy. What I had was all the research that ties South Africa in. And that's what I was going to do, was show people from South Africa, because, I'd show them zeitgeist and I'd show them all these different things. They go, yeah, no, we know about the Skull and Bones, know about the Illuminati, but Africa's different, it's different down here, that doesn't apply to us. What I had to show everybody was actually, Africa is, because of the gold, is huge, the cradle of civilization, all of that, how it plays in. So, there is nothing more satisfying than to create something out of a bad situation. And that's what this book was to me, The South African Guide to the Global Conspiracy. And this book is actually banned in my home country. And my publisher, went into hiding because of it, and had to stop his publishing company because of it. So please, guys, help yourself to a free copy of my book on freedomcentral.info. The ebook version is there. Just click on the link, opens up. Okay, so back to Tellinger and his Ubuntu village. This is the signposts outside. I myself have not yet been there, but interesting. Conscious media videos. Guaranteed you won't find a single thing that I've ever done there. Tellinger knows I'm not his biggest fan. And it's got an info center, talks Adam's calendar, tours to the ruins, all sorts you can do there. Heritage Center. It's a Stone Circle Heritage Center. And of course, Tellinger puts every penny into his pocket. Not a single bit of it goes back into the projects or the community. Okay, you can see museum, coffee shop, really organized there. I mean, to absolutely coin it. But it all goes into his pocket. Nothing goes back into the community at all. So this is from the Ubuntu Party website. Just let's talk about what is there. Michael Tellinger writes, Louise and I are happy to announce that our Ubuntu volunteer program has now been going since January 2014 with great success. And many volunteers want to return to get further involved. That's not true. They never return. We have space for 12 volunteers at any one time to come and help lay the foundations for the first Ubuntu community. We receive hundreds of applications, but many are not clear and many are long and involved life stories. Unfortunately, we cannot afford to feed and house everybody at our cost, and as it would be unaffordable for them, or so they claim. So they ask everybody, especially for those using currencies like the US or US dollar, they have to come, they pay $30 a day. Okay, this is what they're after. Overseas people come over there, pay for your flight out there, go live on their contributionist community place and pay $30 a day to stay there. Okay, and they'll be accommodated and they'll be fed 3 meals a day, coffee and tea and other basic items. Alcohol, cigarettes are not part of the fee, and you'll have to provide these for yourself. And I have actually, just before coming on air, spoke to some volunteers down in Waterfall-Boven on a Skype conference chat, and just to get more information and stories. And I made more notes here and I've added them into the presentation. It just never stops coming. Basically, the volunteers all say the same thing, okay? To be a volunteer at Ubuntu community in Waterfall-Boven, you need to pay $30 a day. Now, there's some parts of the world, places in Turkey and Indonesia, where you can stay in a 5-star hotel for $30 a day, 3 meals a day. Now, why would you want to go and volunteer to be Louisa Michael's personal skivvies and slaves? A number of volunteers have come forward, including people connected to Sasha Stone's New Earth Nation, stating that they leave the Ubuntu project in Waterfall-Boven because nothing is happening there. The impression given on the video clip is that it's a very different state of affairs to what is actually happening. Some people have to travel across the world at great expense, only to have to leave within a few weeks to 2 months, as nobody's allowed to stay longer than 3 months. They leave utterly disillusioned and broken, many of them. There's been a couple of suicide attempts. There's been someone who's actually gone missing, who's not been found. Anyways, many stories. And often these people leave after being chased away by Louise and Michael, being told it doesn't work, or they just leave because there's nothing going on. Any initiative that people bring forward is blocked by Michael, and Michael blocked and fought with everybody that showed any initiatives, any projects that he doesn't have control over. He doesn't like anybody to take their own initiative. They must run everything past him first, and he blocks anything that looks like it's got a chance of succeeding. All donations received by Michael Tellinger for projects has gone straight into his pocket. Not a single project has ever manifested. Okay? None of his supposed projects are functional, operational, or successful, as no resources go into them. Anybody in the Ubuntu community volunteer groups wishing to start a project need to get permission from Michael. He always maintains a complete control and stranglehold to prevent totally, and this is to the point of actually totally stifling projects. But the reason he maintains complete control and stranglehold is because he doesn't want to lose out on the credit or the potential profitability of it. It's all about him and what he wants, and he only wants it to benefit him. He actually doesn't give a shit about anybody else. Michael doesn't care about anybody except his own interests. Now, the money issue. Apart from all the millions that Michael has extorted from people and that he owes people, Michael is constantly asking for money for his Ubuntu Party website for various projects. Most recent one obviously being the keg free energy device, which he imported. We'll get into that later. The problem is there's no disclosure of where or how the money is spent. Most of it ends up in his pocket. To date, not a single fundraiser has resulted in the project getting off the ground. There's been suggestions that there should be community stewards and the bank statements should be made transparent. None of that has ever been forthcoming. And the Ubuntu community should have access to the bank statements to see what has happened to the money. The suggestion is to set up a community of stewards and elders to manage the money effectively. But the paradox remains, why ask for money if Michael Tellinger is trying to set up a money-free society? And a very simple example of this is, why not grow food instead of asking for money for food for the community kitchens, which is what he did. And I mean, Africa has got great climate, fertile soil. Why not grow food? Why not farm the food? Huge amounts of land around there. Anyway, there are many incomplete projects and wasted funds, which he has just pocketed. And the projects are everything from clinics, clinics which didn't get off the ground, to why put big screen TVs in the gym? He's basically got exclusive rights to the community hall, and anyone wanting to use the community hall has to go through him. And the original promise was he wasn't going to use it for politics, but then he did. He used it during his campaigning and everything, and the community are very pissed off with him in Waterfall-Poven. He asked for money to set up a bakery. Nothing happened. Pretended to create food kitchens for the homeless, which he never did. He used volunteers often and leveraged many, many favors which have never been reconciled. It's just, I tell you, I've listened to endless hours and lists of this stuff. And the irony of it is, and all the time he's been doing this in Waterfall-Poven, he has himself never given a presentation to the residents there. And this is what is very peculiar. Waterfall-Poven is a very special place. And here you can see some of the terraced hillsides in Waterfall-Poven that exist. There's a prophecy that came out of South Africa about 25 years ago, about the fact that new world would come out of Waterfall-Poven. And what's interesting is there's a lot of ley lines that go across this particular part of the world, which is why I suppose there's so many ruins and stuff there. A lot of these ruins are buildings that don't even seem to have doors. So there's, ruins of massive constructions that couldn't even seem to enter, for example. So we probably don't even know what the purpose of these things were. But nonetheless, these ruins exist, these terraced landscapes and agricultural terraces in the hills of Waterfall-Poven are there. And for a population of only 6,000 people, there's an astronomically large amount of churches. And this is not new territory for people who follow my work. It's very commonly known that sacred sites, temples, and churches were often put on ley lines. Yeah? But what's interesting is there's also a Freemasons lodge in Waterfall-Poven, a town with only 6,000 people. Right? Now, nobody in Waterfall-Poven has anything nice to say about Michael Tellinger, nor do they think that he's done them any benefit. In fact, they claim that the community is worse off after he arrived than it was before. Yeah, and we see the same pattern with Nelson Mandela. South Africa is worse off after the presidency of Nelson Mandela than it was before. There's a lot of almost like a deliberate stifling of progress, of anything happening. And there's a lot of rumor and speculation about, the fact that Michael's maybe deliberately sent there to stop things from happening. Okay, I've heard stories about people going missing, about people seeing on the hilltops of Waterfall-Poven guys in hooded cloaks. They said they looked like people from the Ku Klux Klan, and someone distinctly said they could heard a voice that was distinctly Michael Tellinger's coming out of this hooded guy doing rituals on the hilltop. So there's all these things which play into it. I don't know if there's any proof or truth to that whatsoever. Anyway, birds of a feather flock together. Michael Tellinger often praised former President Nelson Mandela as a hero. The simple fact is that South Africa is worse off after the presidency of Nelson Mandela than it was before, as I've already said. Like Waterfall-Poven is worse off since Michael Tellinger arrived there. Nelson Mandela was a papal knight and thus a Vatican puppet, subject to the Jesuits. All right? So is Desmond Tutu. All right? You can see him in his regalia, this St. John's regalia. Now, these two characters are also really good friends, Michael Tellinger and Sasha Stone. In fact, Sasha Stone made Michael Tellinger his head of politics for the New Earth Nation portfolio. Michael Tellinger actually did ask Sasha Stone to be the head of the Ubuntu party in the UK, but, when Sasha started hearing all these things coming out about Michael, Sasha politely declined. I myself have actually spoken to and met the guy who is the head of the Ubuntu party in the UK, and he's a pretty scary looking dude. The involvement with New Earth Nation is also a concern for me, because if any of you have seen my previous global reviews, I've gone through quite a bit of detail with my concerns. But what is interesting to note is that Sasha Stone and Michael Tellinger both have very similar backgrounds as failed rock stroke pop stars. Despite all the evidence that is being presented to Sasha Stone with regards to Michael Tellinger, Sasha Stone still remains good friends with Michael Tellinger and considers him credible, because Sasha actually wanted to bring Michael onto my show recently, I beg your pardon, onto Conscious Consumer Network, onto his show as a guest. And I was like, hang on a second, I thought you weren't going to be the head of the Ubuntu Party UK because you don't want to be associated with what Michael was getting up to, but now you want to bring him onto your... No, it just doesn't make sense. There's a lot of things that don't make sense. This is one of the areas where alarm bells went off for me about Sasha. How could he ignore the hardcore proof presented to him? We showed him the contracts with Credo Mutter. He's seen the interviews and the testimonies of the various people who've come forward. He knows it exists, yet he chooses to ignore it. And the reason is because Sasha is just like Michael and has used many people in the same way in his projects. That is why Michael's behavior is acceptable to Sasha, because he does the exact same thing. Alfred Weber's expose of Michael Tellinger in 2015 was very interesting, because Weber actually caught Tellinger out on the fact that Tellinger was promoting Kevin Annett. And obviously Alfred Weber had recently exposed Kevin Annett. And I showed Alfred Weber all the information I had on Tellinger. And Alfred Weber then went and interviewed Credo Mutwa. And Alfred also published those contracts I showed you earlier of Credo Mutwa, where money is owed and the testimonies that Credo's received nothing. Anyway, during this time, Sasha Stone tried to mediate, because he really was trying to hold a hand over Michael's head, trying to protect him, so much so that it actually arose a lot of suspicion. I know Sasha would never stand up for me like that or hold a hand over my head like that. I just can't understand what is the connection there. Why? Why is Sasha so intent on holding a hand over his head, unless they're tied into the same secret society type organization or something? Just speculation, but that's what would make the most sense to me. Anyway, when Sasha did try to mediate, Tellinger was not willing to come to the table to discuss matters with myself and Alfred. Instead, he hit back with insults that he found about me in one of David Icke's books that I had been totally unaware of up until that point. And what's really sad is that mine and David Icke's fallout actually started because of my association with Michael Tellinger, that whole issue back in 2010. And the fact that our relationship has since deteriorated between myself and David is because I have since worked out a few things there, which unfortunately is another story. But the fact that Michael now comes with something David Icke says about me in one of his books to throw in my face as an insult, well, actually, Michael, you're the reason that David and I had the falling out in the first place, if you remember. It's a real cheeky bugger, Michael Tellinger, I tell you. Anyway, here's the issues that I had. Just a reminder of my issues with New Earth Nation was the whole super branding thing. Is that this New Earth media, New Earth resorts, New Earth sport, New Earth cafe, New Earth music, none of that contributes to a better world. None of that feeds hungry children. None of that stops wars. All that is creating a New Earth lifestyle brand that will benefit a few people. It's not going to benefit a large majority of people. It's superfluous. I'm not saying it's a bad thing altogether, or, ball sport, definitely a bad thing. But what I am saying is it's not necessary or relevant now to make a change on a grander scale. And of course, there's this little fuck up as well, the International Tribunal to Natural Justice. And I've gone through this in great detail in a previous Global Initiatives review. Please feel free to go back and watch it. I'm not going to get into the details of this again, but all of this is related, okay? And Tellinger was intimately involved with all of these organizations at the invitation of Sasha Stone. And just to refresh, the following are the reasons that I removed my support for New Earth Nation. The reason I began to support New Earth Nation to begin with is because I supported the concept of zero-point economics, free energy, sustainable development, and new planetary consciousness. The problem with New Earth Nation is they have lost touch with what is necessary, purposeful, and important, and most importantly, what creates new and what perpetuates the old world. The creation of various parts, chapters, portfolios within New Earth Nation creates cause for concern. For me, they are, for example, New Earth Fashion. How does fashion create a better world or heighten consciousness? New Earth Sport. All sport and competition is based on ritual. New Earth Sports Channel. An extremely costly and impractical exercise and of no benefit to the greater good and to the planetary development. And that's all driven by advertising revenue anyway. We want to get rid of advertising. That's not part of the new paradigm. Anyway, cafes, lounges, and resorts do not contribute to creating a better world, rather an epic brand label. Now, there's a lot of mistreatment of volunteers on the project. I've had endless people coming forward about the mistreatment on the New Earth Nation project. Promises made to people that have not been fulfilled and using and misleading people. Now, this is why this is something that's become a bit of a sickness in the truth movement, is people like projects latching together and using each other's brand to enhance their own identity. Okay, but not really wanting to benefit the other brand, just wanting to vampire that brand's energy to enhance their own. And I experience this very much with New Earth Nation, because when we asked gave Sasha the opportunity to come broadcast on Conscious Consumer Network, he was going, yeah, let's make this the biggest channel out there. And I was like, I'm not out to make this biggest channel out there. I just want to give the alternative media tools to use so that we can kind of get into the realm of where mainstream is, to bridge the gap between the two. A very simple, humble objective, and we've rendered it rather artfully, and it's been achieved, and it's been ongoing, and it's doing really well. It's never been about creating a massive super channel. For me, I think lots of different channels is good. It creates diversity. So, one thing that was very obvious was it was all about us supporting them and absolutely no support from them coming our way. In fact, they just made our lives absolute hell working with New Earth Nation. It was very, very, very stressful and traumatic. But these sort of brands that just sort of suck the energy out of other brands, it's by linking organization brands and projects with other organization brands and projects is usually done with the intention of enhancing each other's brand identity. When a particular organization, brand, or project falls into disrepute, it can affect the credibility of the other organization's brands or project. Okay, and this is often what happens with energetic vampirism. Why it's never a good idea to energetic vampire off another organization, because if that organization does happen to go down, it takes you with it. And that's the way it works. So stand alone, strong in your own brands. You don't need to vampire off other people's brands. Now, this is, as I said earlier, Conscious Consumer Network, the intention is not to make it a super brand, okay? I will not be releasing Conscious Consumer Network fashion, Conscious Consumer Network fragrance. If you want to be free like me, you have to smell like me. No. Ask any broadcaster right from the beginning. I've always said, Conscious Consumer Network is not about creating a super brand, or as Sasha put it, the biggest thing out there, which is what he said we were going to do with this network. No, this is about creating tools for the alternative media to use, a very humble and honest projection of what I'd hoped to do with CCN, and that is what we have achieved. We have done what we plan to do, okay? If people want to use the tools we provided, they do so in agreement with a consensual operating format, which is incredibly transparent, and if they do not want to consent, they don't have to. They don't have to use our platform. Brand vampires, the best and the worst of them are, and I'll give you some good examples, Sasha Stone with New Earth Nation and ITNJ, Michael Tellinger's Ubuntu, Hope Girl, Fix the World and Keg, India Murkison with Expanding You, and Jeremy Ayres with Naturally Better. All of them, I've personally experienced brand vampirism, okay, where they use what you've created to enhance their own branding. Now, it's funny how these guys all kind of like stick together, because what's interesting is Hope Girl recently interviewed Michael Tellinger about Ubuntu and contributionism and free energy on the Fix the World media show, because Hope actually sold Michael Tellinger a free energy device in the form of this quantum energy generator, which basically the keg generates more power than it requires to run, but it's not self-looping. It does not run itself. It still requires an external power source, and therefore it's not a free energy device. But Michael Tellinger went onto public forums and raised funding to import, okay, a free energy device. It's not a free energy device. Anyway, Hope Girl's been raising funds to translate the manual for a device that doesn't work because it's not a free energy device. You still need to plug it in. It still needs an external power source. And therefore, this thing in the middle of deepest, darkest Africa, where you have no power source, is absolutely fucking pointless. Okay? It is absolutely pointless. You need an external power source. And of course, with all the load shedding and power shedding in Africa, okay, when you have no external power source, this thing's still pointless. So all the money that Michael Tellinger raised to import this thing, okay, him and Hope Girl are exactly the same, okay? And this is why it's so funny how all these people are polarizing, working together, and they're vampiring off each other's brands, but all their projects are complete fucking frauds. Sorry, I have to say so bluntly, but that's what they are. Anyway, Tellinger recently raised large sums of money to import one of these things, and yeah, it doesn't really work the way he thought it would. Funny that. Didn't do his research. No surprise, he never does. Hope Girl has recently, however, been saying that she wants to go save Africa, and she wants to go out to South Africa to meet Michael Tellinger. I'd love to see what happens there. I want to be a fly on the wall. Anyway, Hope Girl claims that Ubuntu needs leadership and that she thinks she's the person to give it that leadership. She clearly doesn't know what Africa's like. Anyway, what Hope Girl doesn't know is that Ubuntu, or the Ubuntu party, has gotten rid of Michael Tellinger due to how bad he was at his role and is no longer seen as a pivotal figure or leader of any kind in the Ubuntu communities in South Africa. In fact, Prosperity by Ubuntu has been launched by Cyril Gain because Ubuntu got such a bad name because of Michael Tellinger that it was renamed as Prosperity by Ubuntu, and Cyril Gain's doing a great job of mentoring that. And here's the Prosperity by Ubuntu website, which I suggest all of you go and check out. And of course, you know, as I say, birds of a feather, crop circle buddies. Here's a nice photo of Hope Girl and Sasha, who happen to be in a crop circle together at the same time in England. But Hope Girl is, of course, also an ambassador for the ITNJ. Sasha's very close to Michael. Michael's imported one of Hope Girl's fake machines, and Hope Girl is getting her fake manual translated into other languages and raising money for that. And it's all a bunch of fakers all working together with their fake fucking projects, trying to raise money, putting it into their pockets, living lavish lifestyles, traveling around the world, whilst ruining everybody else's ventures and spirits and lives. A lot of people have had their lives ruined because of these people. Anyway, both of them run projects that they claim are about certain things, but they're actually not what they seem, both Hope Girl and Sasha Stone. And of course, like does attract like. And it is funny how these questionable characters and dishonorable people all seem to hang out together. Of course, Hope Moore is also part of Naturally Better, which includes, that's Jeremy Ayres' group, because I said earlier on, of course, he's one of these energy brand vampires. And they all hang out and broadcast on Naturally Better TV, which includes India and Camilla Bowman and Carrie Ellis. I dealt with them in the previous two reviews. I won't go into them again. But most certainly, you better be aware that these are some of the most dangerous people in the truth movement, because one of the most stifling aspects is how these people seem to stifle progress and the pervasiveness of people who all want to be gurus and saviors. It's all an attention-seeking endeavor designed to vampire as much energy out of people as possible, not really about creating a better world. For in trying to do so, we need to be the change we want to see in the world. And messiahs have never been the answers to the problems. They've only ever caused distractions. And we don't need any more hopium merchants, because you know what? Hopium feels good until it wears off, and we all wise up and realize what these people are doing and what they're up to, because the evidence is very clear. So we need to identify false teachers, as it says in Matthew 7, verse 15. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruits. So let's look at the fruits of their labors, shall we? How do we identify false prophets? By looking at their fruits. False teachers lack the courage of their convictions. They are easily swayed to move to the viewpoint that is most beneficial to themselves, and often will flip-flop in a flaky manner between viewpoints, depending on what brings them more of an advantage, particularly in enhancing their external locus of identity or financial advantage for that matter. Identifying false prophets or false teachers. Point 2. Those who have a tendency to jump on the latest publicity-enhancing bandwagon without looking properly into the facts about what they're getting involved with or promoting also pose a threat to those trying to find the truth, as often they create a support network for peoples, projects, or organizations that may not necessarily be beneficial for the greater good, and thus those around them will blindly follow. Tellinger has a habit of jumping onto bandwagons without checking the facts or doing due diligence or research. That's because he's lazy. He just wants to use everybody else's work and energy to enhance himself. And this is very obvious when you look at the things that he's been into or claims to have been involved with, because you don't go from being an 80s pop act to musical theater to a publisher, archaeologist, scientist, research author, to taking on the banks in a very public way, contributionism, politics, wants to be the president, or the Ubuntu community, can be a volunteer, free energy, I'm importing a keg machine, and you know what, not a single thing to date, okay? All his books are plagiarized, all his research is based on other people's stuff. He screwed over all his volunteers, all his projects are a mess. Any project that has the potential to get off the ground, he stifles and flattens it completely. And the free energy device he imports doesn't frickin' work, okay? It's all just too much, okay? It has to be laid on the table. I'm not having a good bitch here about the guy. I'm just laying it all on the table. Anyway, identifying false teachers, point 3. False teachers tend to overwhelmingly ignore any evidence, no matter how strong or damning, which may contradict or conflict with their emotional, mental, or financial investment into a particular person, organization, or project. Evidence of this is demonstrated to me at the Breakthrough Energy Movement Conference, where I questioned Michael Tellinger about the discrepancies in his books, which indicated a serpent god, and his information given in the lecture at the Breakthrough Energy Movement Conference, where he disregards the dragon or serpentine aspect altogether. And of course, this is of great interest to me to know where he stands on this matter, because, of course, dragonology is the basis of a lot of my work. So I questioned him on this, and he didn't want to go anywhere near the dragon aspect of things, simply because, it's controversial, and it could cause him to be unpopular or impact on his popularity ratings and therefore his financial income. Identifying false prophets, part 4. False teachers are usually not there to teach. Their primary purpose is energetic vampirism and energetic gratification and ego gratification. And now I've seen this personally in Michael Tellinger. I've seen it twice. At lectures, Michael has this body language that beckons in the adulation. Often you see the way the queen waves, she does this. It's like beckoning in the adulation. When Michael does his presentations, he's at the end, when he gets an applause or a standing ovation, he stands there, his chest puffs out, and his chin lifts like this. And he just observes as he checks everybody out as they're applauding him. It's vulgar and offensive, because I can see how full of himself he is at that moment. He is transparent and wide open. When I saw that, that's when I knew. This is why you do it. You're sucking it all in. You need that. You crave that attention. He's that insecure. He needs other people to make him feel good about himself. Fakers. I am allergic to fake people, and I make no bones about it. I seriously can't deal with it, and with the distraction they bring. They cause distraction, which can result in neglect, delay, and unnecessary suffering of people who are relying on us to create a better world. Anybody supporting a fake person, organization, or project is perpetuating damaging behavior and allowing the old paradigm to continue. Why do we do what we do? Ask yourself. It's all about the why. The key to being completely true to yourself and others is truly understanding the purpose of what we choose to engage in. Being a conscious consumer is all about taking responsibility for what we choose to put our energetic financial currency into. Always try to choose that which is constructive and beneficial to the whole, not supporting the corporate machine or just supporting or creating profit and celebrity for those who we are giving our energy to, particularly when the intentions are purely selfish. Always be in alignment with the truth and the purpose, and remember to think about what benefits the collective whole. Conscious Consumer Network will categorically not be used to support fakers. We hope to inspire people by focusing on that which is truthful, purposeful, and relevant, because nothing kills inspiration like fakery. There is no purpose to that which is fake. And you need to make your life purposeful. A life without cause is a life without effect. A fake cause or intention will never lead to a holistic effect. And before we end off tonight's presentation, I just want to take a moment to salute the unsung hero in this story, Dr. Credo Mutwa. It gets my heart. I feel so honored through all of this. This is my silver lining. The opportunity to work with this man, and with all my heart, I salute you. Vusa Mazulu Credo Mutwa Sangoma Sanusi. You are the voice of my motherland. May justice be justice, and may it be done unto you, and to all my brothers and sisters who have suffered in Africa. And we are all one, no matter what skin color we are. Skin color is just an artificial mechanism of division, which has been used to separate us. I grew up in Zululand. I consider myself to be Zulu, whether I'm black or not. That's the tribe that Credo comes from. He is my brother. For that, I am eternally grateful to have spoken with him. And Conscious Consumer Network is very honored to have been able to be the first people to put this man next to or on a stage of his peers with researchers where he belongs, with people who have the true knowledge of what is really going on out there. And we did that. We did that for this man. And it has been just such an insane way that we've come to know and work with him and correspond with him. And it's all been over the fact that, you know, Michael Tellinger owed him money, and we've helped him get his voice heard and helped him get his testimony out. And I feel, in a way, in 2010 when I left, like I had betrayed him. I had betrayed Credo. I left him behind without having resolved this Tellinger issue. And we now have the opportunity to resolve it and to put things right. Tribal artifacts within Credo's home are currently in ruins because no money has gone to him. That's largely because people just continue to use this man and rip him off and not give him money. There was great needs for resources to preserve the tribal artifacts and artworks which are going to ruin in Dr. Credo, which was very rundown home. These need to be in a museum. We need to preserve Africa's heritage, or it will be lost forever. And this is the cover of the book, which I have. I can show you. Here's the inner leaf, you can see. And Ears and Down with My Children, for original edition, first edition, very thick. This is my heart, my soul. This means so much to me. I really would like to initiate an initiative where we can somehow preserve this knowledge and preserve the artifacts surrounding this man by getting a network of people up there to get it sorted, you know? And we're taking the initiative with what we do to help make that happen in whatever way we can. As you know, we barely have enough money to run the network, yet we are going to take a portion of the proceeds from all of the Origin Symposium's HD, high definition download sales, which are now on sale at Ethymarket. Okay, we're going to take a portion of all of the sales and we're going to give it to Credo Mutwa. We're setting up a new website. So please, guys, make sure you go. If you missed the Untangled Gatherings Origin Symposium, which was the first time Dr. Credo Mutwa was ever on a world stage with his peers where he belonged, please do check it out. You can download the HD versions, and by downloading that, you not only support Conscious Consumer Network, a portion of the proceeds go to Dr. Credo Mutwa and his beloved wife, Virginia, because this man is probably the only person who knows the true history of Africa. He's probably one of a very few who could give us a true account of what happened. Because, as you know, history is written by the victors and the dominant society, and we've been taught absolute rubbish in schools. We need to preserve this information, people. This is one of the deepest causes closest to my heart. And I'm sorry, I'm trying not to break out in tears here, but this means so much to me to be able to do this. Okay, as I say, all of our work, all CCN's archive shows are available in high definition at ethymarket.com, which is the ethical marketplace for conscious consumers. And all of the people who present their shows and stuff on Conscious Consumer Network, who perhaps have books, courses, and seminars, they all sell them on Ethymarket. And you can also pick up some of Dee's argan oil on Ethymarket, and a portion of those proceeds go toward supporting Conscious Consumer Network as well. And of course, guys, please do support our network fund. We simply cannot continue to function without public support, and we do not wish to sell out to corporate advertisers. And as always, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for supporting free and independent media. That's it from me, Mel V. I'll see you next time on Conscious Consumer Network. Good night. If you really had to make a difference on a large scale with minimal resources, how would you go about it? Have you ever dared to dream of doing that which seems impossible? On a planet steeped with corruption and destruction, the question beckons, how do we change it? Media has a far-reaching impact on people and has been used to manipulate humanity into our current destructive patterns. In order to affect people into moving into constructive patterns of behavior, we need to construct a new paradigm of media. Conscious Consumer Network has been created with the explicit intention of giving the amazing truth-seeking, solutions-orientated, alternative media a place to fully realize their true potential with a cutting-edge, high-tech professional media platform. In turn, some of the greatest freedom-seeking hearts and souls of our time have realized the true potential of what has been created and have come together to provide their insight and inspiration on CCN. Conscious Consumer Network has become a unique, interactive information and educational network which provides a free-to-view, live-stream, ultra-high-definition channel to the world and features 25 live shows a week and growing with the addition of multiple language broadcasts. CCN has features comparable with mainstream media, such as being able to pause and rewind broadcasts whilst being live streamed. Catch up on missed or previous broadcasts, now available from CCN High Definition Downloads. You can now purchase a high definition download of your favorite CCN show from ethymarket.com. Support free and independent media by becoming a monthly pledger. This can be done with a monthly pledge of €10, which will allow you unlimited access to CCN's high definition downloads, which hosts a back catalogue of over 250 shows which have been aired since the launch of CCN on the 1st of January 2015. In order to keep CCN free of corporate sponsorship and advertising, CCN has launched the Pledge 300 campaign. This is a realistic goal with the hopes of securing a minimum of 300 people who will each pledge €10 a month. With this number, we can continue to grow and operate and potentially expand into a second foreign language channel. Help keep alternative media in the hands of the people. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.